I didn't even know Cold Bay existed until they flew us out there around 20 years ago now. I was 23 years old and in the army. I was green enough to follow any and all orders without asking any questions, but not green enough to think any of what was happening was normal in the slightest. We didn't even get a briefing that day before they stuffed 6 of us into the back of a C-130 that did not have any markings. It lifted off out of Anchorage under a full blackout. We had no lights and no radios. They didn't even tell us where we were going until we landed. One thing that still to this day does not make sense to me is why my dumbass was chosen for this. Cold Bay isn't a town. It's a mistake someone made on a map and never corrected. Now, I obviously don't mean that literally, but it is a hellhole. Population could not have been more than 60 people at the time that this happened. It used to be an old World War II airbase with just hangars, gravel, and harsh wind. The kind of place where you can feel the cold blowing in off the water even when you're inside. The kind of cold that gets behind your ribs. As soon as we landed, 2 men in DHS jackets pulled us aside. But they weren't DHS, that was abundantly clear. I mean, the jacket said they were, but there was no name and no badge number. It was just 2 guys who looked like they had not slept in days, dragging on cigarettes like they were keeping something inside. They did not introduce themselves to us, and they did not appear to be wearing any insignia to display their rank either. They just told us that we were part of a security perimeter, containment cordon they called it. For what, they didn't say. We were given a map that was clearly photocopied, which made it barely legible. Our job was to secure the road between Cold Bay and a tiny dockyard facility about 15 miles southwest along the coast. The port didn't even have a name. We had to go in at night with no lights, no comms, and just hand signals and position markers. Talk about primitive. The whole thing had that smell, you know? The stink of over-prepared silence. The kind where you're not supposed to know anything because if you did, you wouldn't go. We were set up in these little collapsible tents just off the gravel road. There was nothing but tundra and dead pine for miles all around us. There were already a few others there, but it was just some guys we didn't recognize. Some were military, which was reassuring, but some others clearly were not. One guy had a patch that I didn't know. I think it was something like black with a red triangle. I asked him where he was from. He just said Langley without looking up from his coffee. The third night, just after 0100, it started. We didn't even get a proper warning. We just heard a low mechanical hum that came from the direction of the coast. Not natural, not weather. It rattled your teeth. The kind of sub-bass that gets into your skull and pushes. I asked one of the DHS jackets what it was, and he just said, it's ahead of schedule. At 1:46 a.m., we finally got the signal to move in. We were told to intercept a small convoy heading north from the port. We did not even see the vehicles until they were almost on top of us because they had all of their lights off, no engines on, just coasting over the frost-covered gravel. There were 3 trucks in total that were civilian plated. I couldn't see a driver through the window. The windows were much too dark to see through in the slightest. We set up a roadblock with the spiked chains. I remember thinking it was overkill at the time. I was definitely wrong about that. When the first truck hit the chain, it stopped like it hit a wall. It didn't skid or drift, it just came to an instant halt. I approached the driver's side door and knocked, but I received no answer from whoever was inside. Then I saw the blood. It wasn't any kind of splash or a spatter from a wound. This was a full-on smear of blood across the windshield. It looked like someone had dragged a soaked towel across the inside of the windshield, except soaked with blood. The blood was not fresh either. It looked dark and dried and cracked in the corners. I opened the door up. There was no driver in there. In fact, there was no one in the cab at all. No sign anyone had ever sat there. The seat belts were all still wrapped up in plastic, like it was new from the dealer. But the floor mat was soaked with thick, black red. Then something started moving in the truck bed. I had my rifle up before my brain even caught up with the situation. Whatever it was, it didn't make sense. It looked like just fabric at first, like a black tarp shifting in the wind, but there was no wind at the time, and the movement too. It wasn't fluid. I shouted for whoever it was to come out immediately, and that we were authorized to use lethal force if necessary. Nothing happened after I shouted that, as in, We did not get any kind of verbal response from whoever was in there. The tarp just slithered over the side of the truck and dropped to the ground without a sound. I didn't wait and just did what I was trained to do. I fired instinctively, 3 shots in total, just to make sure whoever it was did not get back up again. Let me tell you, I have never in my life seen rounds hit something and disappear, like they were absorbed. Firing at whatever or whoever this thing was felt like firing into water if water didn't splash. The others opened fire too as soon as I let fly, and that is when it stood up. It wasn't incredibly tall or towering over us, but it did not look human. It didn't have a face or legs or arms. It was just wrong. Like it was wearing the shape of something familiar, but couldn't quite get it right. It had too many joints, and its movements were half a second out of sync with reality, like a bad puppet. Then came the sound. The sound was not coming from the thing. It was coming from inside us. I don't know how else to say it. It wasn't screaming. It was more like a sound that was impossible to describe, playing in your head. I dropped to my knees when I felt it, and so did 2 others. It was completely disabling. The next thing I remember clearly was the DHS guy dragging us away by our collars and shouting something about containment breached and fallback protocol. The truck was gone. The thing was gone. There was just a wide black smear on the ground, like oil in the snow. But it wasn't melting the snow. It was freezing it harder. We were told to shut up and debriefed in a prefab building with no windows. We were given no kind of notes or explanations, and they did not even bother to make us sign anything. There was just a camera on the ceiling in the room and a guy with a recorder when we were sat down. It was done one by one. They made us say what we saw, and then they told us none of it happened. If we talked, they said that we'd violated federal containment statutes and could be prosecuted under the Patriot Act. Guess that's why they didn't even bother with another NDA. Just extra pointless paperwork at that point. They flew us back in pairs on different planes, heading to completely different airports. I wasn't even sent home, just some random-ass European country. Had to get my own flight back to the States hours afterwards. None of us ever heard from each other again after that, because we had no way to contact each other. Luckily for me, we had a short while to talk in between the interviews and being shipped off, and we used that time. Alright, so here is where it gets really fucked up. I was there that day, right? But me and my buddy Jay, we saw different shit, and he told me his side right before we got pulled out and shipped back. I have never said this out loud before, but it is all true. I can't imagine he has told anyone else either, but if somehow you have heard this from him before or from someplace else, just bear with me. Jay was on the inside crew, the ones who had to deal with what was actually coming through that port in Alaska. While I was holding the perimeter, keeping watch, and running security, Jay and his team got tasked with sorting through the cargo. He was closer to the source than anyone else, closer than I ever wanted to be. He said when they first opened the container, they expected maybe drugs, weapons, something bad but understandable. Instead, what they saw was something else. Not a bomb or a weapon they could spot, but something that made their skin crawl and their minds race. Jay described it as a sealed, frozen chamber inside the container. They cracked it open, and inside was this thing wrapped in layers of ice and strange membranes. It looked almost organic, but nothing like any human or animal. It was massive, and at least 8 feet tall when fully stretched, though it was curled up tight like it was sleeping, or maybe pretending to. He said the thing had what looked like a head, but had no face. Just a smooth, featureless surface, like a giant eggplant, but slick and wet. No eyes, no mouth, just this dull sheen reflecting their flashlights. The rest of it was this mass of pale flesh with veins pulsing underneath, like it was alive, maybe barely. The veins glowed faintly, but Jay swore he saw them move, like something was still fighting to survive inside the frozen shell. Then the worst part. The air around it smelled like death, mixed with something acidic, like burnt rubber and rotten eggs mixed with fresh blood. He said the whole room felt thick, like breathing was suddenly harder. Jay said that the scientists who came with them were acting weird, and like they knew it was bad, but were trying to keep their faces straight. They would not talk much, only whispered orders to stabilize the container and limit exposure. Jay told me that as they worked, the temperature sensors kept fluctuating, sometimes dropping below what should be physically possible, sometimes spiking to near boiling inside the container. The creature, if you want to call it that, was messing with the environment somehow, like it was alive and aware. And then came the first incident. One of the scientists got too close while trying to attach a monitoring device to the container's surface. Jay said this dude's hand just melted right in front of him, said the skin blackened and bubbled like he had been burned alive from the inside out. Jay tried to pull him back, but it was too late. The guy screamed like a madman, clawing at his own flesh as it liquefied. No one knew what to do except step back and watch. They had to quarantine the whole area. Jay said the smell got worse, filling their suits and making everyone gag, but they could not leave the cargo unattended. Now, unbeknownst to all of us, the comms had gone down between our units and theirs, so there was no way to quickly inform us of what was happening. He said that with all of the chaos going on, they did not want to spare a single person and wanted all eyes on. Not to mention, it wasn't just one group running this thing. There were like 3 or 4 agencies on site during both our incidents, and all of them were acting like they were the ones in charge and calling the shots. To sum it up, it was a fucking mess from the get-go. What freaked Jay out the most was what happened overnight. The container started to pulse and breathe on its own. It wasn't anything mechanical or electronic. It was like the creature inside was trying to wake up. The walls warped and rippled as if the thing was alive and trying to stretch out after being frozen. The scientists all got pulled in to observe, but Jay said it looked like they were too afraid. The next morning, Jay said, when they went back to check on the container, the ice and membranes had started melting on their own. The creature's flesh was bleeding this dark, tar-like substance that pulled at the bottom of the chamber. The veins under its skin glowed brighter, and Jay said he saw something moving inside of it. Maybe hundreds of tiny things, all at once, writhing like parasites. One of the senior scientists made a call to seal the chamber completely. That is when everything went sideways. That night, the power went out in their section of the base. Emergency lights flickered on, but Jay said they all felt like something was in the shadows with them, watching. When power came back on, they found the container cracked open, the creature partially out. They never saw it fully. The thing slivered out, but it wasn't like a normal animal moving. It folded in on itself, twisting and compressing like a nightmare-made flesh. It moved faster than anything Jay had ever seen. It had no legs and no arms. It was just this pale, writhing mass that seemed to absorb light around it. It left a trail of black, oily sludge where it went, and the smell was worse than before, like burning sulfur and decay. Jay said the team that tried to stop it disappeared fast. They found one guy crushed beneath some heavy machinery, with his face melted beyond recognition. Another was found locked inside a freezer, frozen solid, but with eyes wide open like he was still conscious. Jay said they chased the thing into the nearby forest, but it wasn't just a chase. The forest itself started dying where the creature went. Trees withered, animals ran off or dropped dead. It was like the thing drained life. The last thing Jay said to me was the worst. Before they were pulled out and shipped back, Jay told me his team was told to erase all biological evidence and clean up the scene. They found strange stains in the snow that no amount of chemicals or fire could remove. I would not be surprised if they were still there to this day. He said the higher-ups were desperate to cover it all up. Not just the military or DHS, but some group that felt above them all. Jay swore they saw men in suits show up with unmarked vans, collecting every scrap and piece of footage. Everyone was ordered to stay silent under threat of imprisonment or worse. Jay never got any answers on what that thing was. If everything he told me was true, and he wasn't mistaken or confused, then that must mean that there was more than one. Otherwise, how would it make sense? How would that thing have gotten to us? But if there is two, then I don't know what the fuck could even have been done. Hey, hope you've enjoyed the story so far. If you want to hear more, make sure to subscribe, like the video, and leave a comment because it lets YouTube know you like the content and helps more people to see these videos. My next big goal for the channel is 100,000 subscribers, and as a celebration, I will be doing a Q&A video once we hit that goal. Thank you, and back to the stories. Not sure if X is exactly the right place for this, but it has been a month and I need to share the story somewhere. Be me. Eating instant ramen for lunch every day. Realize I need a second job. Get hired at a local movie theater. Sweet, maybe I can see some movies for free. Nope. My job is to sell popcorn and shit at the front. First day. Minecraft movie came out earlier this week, so I have to deal with 5-year-olds screaming, "Chicken Jockey," at the top of their lungs. Their parents just stare into the distance. After a while, people stop showing up. Movie starts soon. Everyone is in the theater. Boss tells us to get moving. Everyone in the lobby starts going into the theater hallway. Asks where we're going. Minecraft movie's on. Maybe I will get to see a movie for free. Follow everyone into a big supply closet. Disappointment. We are just restocking the concession stands and shit. Once everyone is inside, boss locks the door. What the fuck? Is this some type of hazing ritual? Ask what's going on. Get ignored. Someone help me move this. They push a shelf in front of the door like a fucking barricade. Shit. They're gonna murder me or something. Ask what the fuck is happening. Boss starts talking about how people get a little crazy in the Minecraft movie, then trails off. Start laughing. We are hunkering down like there's a fucking tornado warning because of the Minecraft movie. Everyone just kinda stares at me. Laugh harder because of that. Suddenly, we hear people screaming all at the same time, "Chicken Jockey," like their collective IQ is less than the number of chickens in a jockey. They are 3 fucking rooms away. Note to self, wear earplugs to the Minecraft movie. Can still hear a commotion coming from that theater. Unintelligible shouting and screaming. Start hearing them banging on the walls. Chuckle, imagining the property damage. The shouting starts getting louder. At this point, I can't tell if those screams of joy or terror. Realize it's not getting louder, but closer. At this point, they were just down the hall, about 20 to 30 feet away from our door. I kinda wanna see what's going on, but the door is barricaded. Laugh, imagining the mob. Noise stops. Oh shit. They fucking heard me. Someone clamps their hand over my mouth. It's too late. The shouting picks up again, and the horde comes right up to our door. They start banging on the door and the walls. At first it sounds like constant banging, but after a while they start coordinating. Now everyone hits the wall at the same time, like a fucking bee. Does someone have like a battering ram? Can see the door moving a bit, but the shelf is holding it closed. The shelf does not have a back, so it's not completely covering the door. We can see the door cracking between the shelves. Everyone is panicked. The hinges start breaking somehow, and the horde manages to force the door open just a little. Someone manages to stick their hand through. It's coated in fucking soda and popcorn. It claws at the door. More hands come through the crack. They are going to break the door and crawl through the shelf. No other exit, since it is a supply closet. Boss barks orders at us like a fucking army general. Tells us to pick up chairs and whatever else we can find, and start breaking through the drywall on the opposite wall. We have no idea what room is on the other side. Follow his orders. The drywall starts crumbling as 9 people bash it with various objects. The shouts and screeches from the horde start sounding less and less human. Go, go, go. We start clawing at the drywall and tearing it out with our bare hands. They're getting in. Too terrified to look back, just keep digging. Hole breaks through to the other side of the wall. It's another fucking supply closet. We climb through the tiny hole, one at a time. I go second. Don't worry, Nons, it's almost done. Run to the door of the second supply closet and pray nobody is outside it. It's locked. Oh shit. Where is the fucking key? Hear people screaming from the first room. Can't really see anything through the hole. Boss is getting tackled to the ground by more people covered in soda and popcorn. Can only see their legs. Boss throws the key through the hole. Frantically unlock the door. Don't have the courage to look back, but can hear someone climbing through the hole in the drywall. Pray to God, it's one of us. Me and at least 2 others bolt to the exit. Reach a corner in the hallway. Wrong fucking way. Hear noises around the corner. Turn around ASAP. Wait a minute. No, don't go back. They climb through the drywall. Turn right. No idea where the fuck we're going. All we know is we're going away from the noises. Eventually make it to an exit. Thank God. I keep running away from the theater into the nearby forest. Carried on, nothing but adrenaline. Forgot where I was even going. Regain my sanity and realize where I am. Others probably ran a different direction. I don't see them now. Now at the edge of the forest, I can see some cars show up to the theater. Saline County Police. Now that I think about it, that was definitely not the fucking Saline County Police. They were in white vans which were unmarked except for the initials, carried fucking assault rifles and wore hazmat suits. Ran toward them to tell them what happened. They acted like I wasn't fucking there. All I got was a get out of the way. They charged into the theater. Hear gunfire. What the fuck? Realize I should not be here anymore and walk home. Don't realize I left my car in the theater parking lot until hours later. Never went back to the theater except to get my car back. Never heard anything in the news about it. I want to tell someone, but they won't believe me. It's been about a month. What should I do? I feel like I can't even watch movies anymore. Get a load of this guy. OP here. Once again, thanks to everyone who contributed. Without you, X is nothing. I will share a personal story now. This is all from memory, so it'll be a rough sketch. It's not really about me though, but about my friend, Elijah. Grew up in East Texas. I am a small kid and a bookworm, which makes me kind of an outcast in elementary. No friends. Feels bad, man. In 6th grade, I meet Elijah. His family is from Louisiana, and he's super Cajun. Uses French words all the time, has a funny accent, and is a great storyteller. He is also athletic and a good-looking kid, so he's pretty popular. Somehow we get along great. He tells me all about his grandfather, Pawpaw, who apparently gets a lot of sick people visiting him all the time. Pawpaw prays over them and heals them. This sounded like some X-Men shit to my young brain, so I was fascinated. Fast forward to the summer after 6th grade. Elijah is going back to Louisiana to visit family. Since I have no other friends, I spend the summer reading. He comes back in August and invites me over to his house. Says he has to tell me something important about Pawpaw. Hell yeah, more X-Men stories. When I show up, Elijah tells me that Pawpaw passed on the healing powers to him. Not gonna lie, I was kinda jealous when he said this. I wanted to be an X-Man. Why not me? Pawpaw told me that he's going to die soon and needed to pass on the healing to someone. Normally, a man passes it on to a young girl, and a woman passes it on to a young boy, but Pawpaw broke the rule because he could not find anybody to pass it on to. Apparently, nobody wants to be a healer anymore because it is a very hard life. They aren't allowed to charge money because it is against tradition, so they just have to rely on the kindness of those they heal. Most people go to them because they cannot afford doctors, so they normally do not pay anything. Most healers are very poor as a result. Show me the power, I say. I can't. I can only use it if someone is sick and needs it, but I will tell you how I got it. Pawpaw brought Elijah into a room, just the two of them, and Elijah memorized a bunch of prayers in French. As Elijah is memorizing them, it feels like someone gently forces him off of his chair and down to his knees. He feels his arms being lifted up high above his head, and a warm feeling fills his body. He lowers his head, almost afraid. He turns his hands so they are palm side up, and something that feels like warm liquid pours into them. Elijah thinks Pawpaw is pouring warm water into his hands at first, but he turns his head slightly and sees him sitting still a few feet away. After a while, the feeling goes away, and Elijah stands back up. Pawpaw says, "Now you have the power." Fast forward to later that day. A neighbor woman showed up with her crying child. He fell and broke his leg. Pawpaw tells Elijah to use a certain prayer while laying his hands on the boy's broken leg. Elijah starts feeling the same warmth as before, all throughout his body. This time, the warmth goes quickly into his hands, and they feel like they are burning. Elijah prays until he feels the burning leave his hands and the boy is no longer crying. The woman thanks them both and gives Pawpaw a bowl of rice. After I heard this, I used to bug Elijah all the time about showing me his healing power, but he always refused. I began to suspect that it was just one of his stories, but then something happened just before he moved away. It was 8th grade gym class. The coach in his office was not paying attention as usual while the kids were playing basketball. Elijah's team is winning, and I am just sitting on the bleachers reading when I hear a scream. I look up. Holy fuck. One of the kids is on the floor holding his leg. It's snapped at the shin. Never seen anything like that in person, but I can't look away. Everyone is freaking out, and Elijah pushes all of them back and kneels next to the kid. He places his hand on the kid's leg as the kid is screaming. Oh shit, X-Men time. Coach is hurrying over at this point. I get up off the bleachers and run over when suddenly, gasp. Everybody gasps in unison. The whole gym is fucking silent as Elijah pulls the kid up from the ground. His leg is completely fine. Coach chews them out for causing a scene over nothing. Oddly enough, people started hating Elijah after this. He became a total pariah, which he didn't actually seem to mind since he and I were best friends. We hung out by ourselves the rest of that year until his family moved back to Louisiana that summer. We eventually lost touch, and I went back to having no friends, which I don't really mind either. After all, I've got UX. Anyway, please feel free to keep contributing. I am enjoying all of these reads. Me and 4 of my friends were in the Russian countryside this winter. We stayed at one of my friend's houses from mid-December to the beginning of January, about 20 kilometers east of Moscow. On the night before New Year's, we had a terrifying encounter with something horrible. It was 1:30 a.m. and we had stayed at the house all day, ate pizza, watched movies, and played Mortal Kombat. We had also been to the sauna and had all been in good spirits, as later that day it would be New Year's. We were outside my friend's house, which overlooks a very small valley, about 10 meters in depth and 60 meters in length, and we were blowing up some firecrackers that we had prepared. His house is quite isolated, with the nearest neighbors about 100 meters away. We blew them up one by one by throwing them into the valley that was next to the house. As we were doing this, I was the first to notice a black silhouette with a glowing cigarette in the distance, moving towards us extremely fast. I immediately notified everyone with me and told them to get inside the house's courtyard. My friends saw the figure, were confused as to who it may be and what they were doing, but weren't worried, as the figure was a very long way away, and we had at least 2 minutes before he came close enough to properly see our faces or do anything. I looked back at the figure and immediately noticed that his eyes had a faint glow. Nothing crazy or bright, just a very faint yellow/goldish glow, similar to the way a cat's eyes reflect light in the darkness. I also noticed that the figure had traveled a very large distance in the 5 seconds I took to turn around and inform my friends. This was especially worrying, as he was walking, not running. I immediately knew that it was time to leave. I ran towards the gate to the house and yelled for my friends to follow me, which after witnessing what I had witnessed, they obliged, except one of them. One of our friends looked frozen in fear. His eyes were wide open, his mouth slightly open too, and he was not blinking. This entire time, he was looking at the figure. I ran and pushed him in order to get him to move, which made him snap out of some sort of light trance as he was slightly lost. By this point, the figure was about 100 meters away, and nearly at the same time, all of us were filled by a visceral feeling of dread. Not fear, but more like, whatever is happening right now is very, very wrong. We later realized that this probably emanated from the men. As we were entering the garden and ducking behind the fence, we noticed that the man was moving a minimum of 5 times as fast as a regular person running, while making absolutely no noise, even though he was walking. We hid behind the fence for ages and managed to get a picture of him from underneath the fence. He then walked into the nearby woods, leaving behind absolutely no footprints and making no noise at all. I have no clue what this was, but we are 100% sure that whatever this was not human. I forgot to add, but one of my friends said the man apparently turned into smoke at one point, like white smoke, and then materialized again. Not sure if I believe him, as nobody else saw it. Be me, 18 years old, 2008, summer before leaving for college. Name is Brandon. I am a 4-sport athlete, huge ego, muscular, not scared of shit. Mom has had a daycare in my house my whole life. Month prior, takes on a new autistic kid named Brandon, who has an imaginary friend named Brandon. Not the craziest thing I've ever heard. Hardly noticed weird story number 997 from daycare life. Not home much that summer, because partying and everything else. Mom starts noticing that for some fucking reason, every single night, every picture of me in the house is being turned around on whatever desk or shelf it's on, 180 degrees, goes on for months. Eventually, my mom tells me about this, and I laugh it off because what other option do I have? The same night, I get home about 1 a.m. and lay down in bed wide awake. Bed faces the door, house is pitch black, door is wide open. Get weird ass feeling, stare at door. Door slams shut with a massive force. Have had this lifelong rule where if I'm scared, I quickly and calmly just get up, turn on lights or whatever, don't act scared, don't get scared, etc. Always thought ghosts would know, and my 5-year-old logic always worked great. Get up and walk to lamp to turn it on. Bulb fucking explodes in a flash of blue. Glass falls all over my dresser. Stick to plan and stay calm, getting harder. Walk to door. Fuck this, I'm leaving. Door is locked and I cannot unlock it. Fucker will not unlock. I start panicking. Twist the shitty door handle so hard it broke off, but door opens. Go to walk out of bedroom and the door closes so fast behind me it cuts into the heel of my foot before I can even step outside of its path and makes the wobble noise that doors make when you slam them against something. I got in my fucking car, went to my friend's house, did not go home for 2 weeks, have never stepped a single foot into that room since, didn't even pack for college myself, and never will, ever again. Not a flashy story, but it really happened.